courts have much longer duration.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Naima. And modern corporations do live much longer than companies with a single owner or a partnership. For example, this, at least in my searching, appears to be the longest traded stock in the United States. And so the oldest public corporation, that is Con Edison. It's a utility. They do electricity and natural gas. And they have been on the stock market since 1824, so almost 200 years. Not only do they live longer, but the nature of risk has changed, and so businesses can grow much larger. And this is because people can invest in lots of companies that do similar things. Brenner might invest in General Motors and Ford. He might also invest in Volkswagen, Toyota. And this is because Brenner knows, it's not that Ford might disappear tomorrow, but he knows that some companies will do well sometimes and do poorly at others. But if he is invested in lots of similar businesses, at least some of them are going to be successful, which means over time, Brenner should get richer. Okay, the code is going to stay in the upper right-hand corner. When we left off last time, we're talking about how modern corporations were able to use longer lifespans, not for people, but for the companies themselves, and much better access to investment money to get much, much bigger. And this increase in size provides a transformation from the small single proprietor or partnership business to mass production in large factories. The same as you would have a single butcher versus mass production butchering, in the case of Triumph in St. Joe, thousands of hogs every day. Another part of this story that's very much related to the corporation is capitalism. These two very much go hand in glove or hand in hand or cheek by jowl. Pick your own imagery. Capitalism is an economic system in which corporations can thrive. One part of the system is private property. Your property is your own, and in lots of ways, with some limits, you can do what you want with it. This is different from what we had under feudalism, where you have your land because a king grants it to you, and the king could take that away. In this case, you actually own your property, not the government. property can be different things. Property can be, as we've already mentioned, land. It can be the natural resources we find in that land or on that land. It might be mineral resources like iron or oil. But also the things on the land that turn resources into stuff, like factories. And other things you build on the land that you use for your business, like railroads. The second component of this is treating property as a capital asset. I realize that just saying that probably doesn't mean very much. But what we mean by capital asset is a thing that you can use to continually make more money. And this is a big part of why people invest money. People invest money either directly in capital assets. Jasper might go buy some land that has oil wells on it, or some forest that can be cut down and turned into wood and sold. Ireland, by contrast, might invest in a company like British Petroleum that itself owns the oil wells or leases them and makes money off the oil. But in all of these cases, there is property being used to make more money. And the idea here is that you use the assets you have today to become wealthier and to get more assets to make even more money in the future. Which to us probably sounds a lot like common sense for investing. But to understand that the way things had been in Europe, where this is really getting started, if Amy is an aristocrat, Amy's source of wealth is land. That's it. Amy's not looking at figuring out how to use that land to make money, to get more land, or to buy other things. Right? The land is just this thing that is there, that has always provided a steady stream of money for Amy, and that's it. And that's fine. This encourages people to think of new ways to get more money out of their assets and get more assets. And this is called reinvestment. So new wealth gets reinvested to create more wealth, which we can also think of as capital. This is what Warren Buffett does. He's that billionaire very close to home. He's called the Oracle of Omaha. He likes companies that reinvest their profits to keep getting bigger and to generating more money. Some people like companies that pay them a check out of their profits. And that's okay too. But Warren Buffett is very much focused on that cycle of wealth creation. Now, capitalism and corporations together, and both of these we can think of as business innovations, helped produce technology, which, again, as I said, I know business innovations aren't always exciting. But these things made technological innovations of all kinds possible. And it did this by directing money. Companies that were inventing new things that could make money received investment. And so companies are in sometimes life and death competition to invent new technologies and improve things. The Ford Motor Corporation, in its fairly early days, had to hire private investigators because somebody kept killing some of their people researching, if I remember correctly, it was how to make rubber tires and rubber parts for cars better. I think these guys were being poisoned. They kept having these very suspicious heart attacks all the time. Now, I know that's kind of outside of the 1800 to 1914 period, but that's like a company I know you all have heard of. And understand that people inventing new things are making the world better in lots of ways. That's why there's a picture of the patent for toilet paper rolls up there. That made a lot of people's lives much better. But the person who invented that didn't do that because they wanted to make everyone's lives better. They did it to make money. That doesn't mean they're bad people either. Knowing what people used to use before toilet paper, I'm very glad there was some money-interested soul that invented the toilet paper. Of course, it's not just toilet paper. Not even close. The technology we're going to focus on is rather different. The first is steam power. And that is the steam engine. And we still use the basic principle of steam power today. That's what's keeping much of the lights on here right now, is a coal-fired power plant that boils water at extremely high temperatures down near Weston. Even, we've got this picture of an old paddle wheel steamer. Looks very antique. But if I instead had a picture of America's latest giant aircraft carrier, still powered by steam. Yes, we use a nuclear reaction to generate the heat that makes that steam, but it's still steam. The steam engine allowed us to move people, resources, and goods in much greater quantities and much, much faster. That's a good question. I don't honestly know for sure. Like, I doubt that they were thinking that much about aerodynamics. It may have been more about like what it may have been about was kind of managing the draft of air over that open thing to keep the draw from being disturbed by the form. That's me with my social science degree talking about engineering things that I don't know. But that's my guess. And because we're no longer relying on just water currents in rivers or wind power for sails, we can do this all much more regularly. It doesn't matter if it's the time of year when the winds aren't as strong in certain parts of the ocean. We don't need them anymore. As long as we have coal and water, the steam engines will work and we can keep moving. So again, we're much less at the mercy of the winds. And this means, for the very first time, shipping companies and passenger companies can publish printed schedules of when their ships are going to leave somewhere and when they're going to arrive at somewhere else. Again, that's something we take for granted. Those of you that ride a bus to school, there's a schedule. You know when to go out. You don't go out 3 hours early thinking, man, might be one of those days. And you don't go expecting that you'll be standing there for 3 hours in case the wind isn't as strong and you don't get picked up on time. Okay. The second technology, and we don't often think about this one showing up very early, but it does. Refrigeration has actually been around for a long time. This means things that used to be produced and consumed locally, right, like meat or fruits and vegetables, can now be kept cold and transported over huge distances. And as one example, and you'll learn this in your U.S. history class, but meat from cattle raised in places like Kansas and the Dakotas and Oklahoma or Texas and farther west in the United States. And not just that, but also from South America, places like Brazil and Argentina that are famous for producing grazing for cattle. And also thinking about farther south, fruit from tropical locations can be shipped across continents and across oceans. Bless you. Next up, communication. The telegraph quickly followed by the telephone. The telegraph lets you send signals across wires. That's your Morse code, dots and dashes, coded communication. And then really very quickly, Alexander Graham Bell figures out how to send voice over these electrified wires. And then these wires spread across continents, and we bury them under oceans between the United States and Canada and Europe, both continental Europe, France, and also the United Kingdom. And this allows you to communicate instantaneously. I mean, really, your only limit is the speed of electricity. So again, we're talking thousands of miles. We think of this maybe as something that we can only do recently. This has been done for probably getting close to 150 years at this point, if I'm doing the math right in my head. And this brought the world much closer together. Remember, one of the things that makes globalization possible is easier and cheaper communication. Now, news that happens in Europe can be in American newspapers that evening or the next morning. Previously, it could take weeks for news to go across the ocean to the United States, right, or back. Now, that may not have been enough technology time for some of you, and I get that. But those are the things we need to focus on in technology. Next, we need to look at enlightenment. And this is going to be some more heavy lifting on our part, because some of these ideas are not the easiest to understand. And a lot of these are going to be, especially in the beginning here, economic ideas. So first, we're going to meet the invisible hand and laissez-faire, or laissez-faire. We're also going to learn about comparative advantage. So invisible hand and laissez-faire will come from Adam Smith. Comparative advantage will be David Ricardo. And Rudyard Kipling, if you're thinking, I've heard that name before, yes, he wrote The Jungle Book. And his idea is called the white man's burden. Now we'll take those in order. We'll start with the invisible hand and laissez-faire. Again, the man responsible for that is Adam Smith. And he wrote this idea most famously in 1776. He's not an American, he's a Scot. And this kind of gets at the same issue we raised with the invention of toilet paper, right? He says that people, they work, they buy things, they sell things for their own interests, right? Their own needs, their own wishes. But in doing this, they will end up serving the interests of everybody. Right, so people just looking out for themselves end up benefiting everybody, as long as they get to act voluntarily. So as long as people have free choice, what they do for their own good will end up benefiting everyone. And the reason that these actions will benefit everyone is because of what Smith called the invisible hand of the market. So what does a market mean? We're not talking about a farmer's market. We're talking about the whole market. The whole market is the economy that everybody is living in, working in, and competing. Competing to get more things, right? More money, buy more stuff. So people are trying to make the most profit they can from their work. In order to be able to buy the best stuff for the lowest prices. Again, we're all looking out for ourselves. All right, now, when we put these things with laissez-faire, we can get the other half of this equation. And this takes a while to kind of present his argument on laissez-faire. So Adam Smith says that because the market benefits the entire community while letting people look out for themselves, right? Their own self-interest. The government should have a laissez-faire approach to the market. Now, I'm not using French to be snooty. There are people that do this, but laissez-faire is the term you're always going to be associated with this. Laissez-faire means let it be or let it alone. What Adam Smith is saying in French, and I should tell you that British writers, whether they're English or Scottish, love to sprinkle French into their writing. So when Adam Smith says this, what he means is the government should not tie the market up with a bunch of rules about what people can and can't do, what companies can and can't do. It should leave them alone. Now, these restrictions we're familiar with because we hear people talk about this kind of stuff a lot. Complain about regulations. There are always famous pictures of politicians like standing next to piles of paper that represent all of the regulations created by the government. And there are tons. I'm not saying that those politicians are wrong. There are lawyers that point out that most of us commit 3 felonies every day, breaking laws we don't even know about. Yeah, I'm not suggesting that like Breyer knocks off 3 convenience stores like on his way to and from school every day. It's not those kind of felon. I mean, maybe you do, Breyer. Maybe you do. But let's just for now assume that you don't. This would be Breyer just doing normal everyday Breyer things, not trying to hurt anybody, probably not even hurting anybody, but maybe still breaking important rules and laws that he didn't know existed. We also call these red tape. Red tape blocking you from doing all kinds of things you want to do. Instead, Adam Smith, again, with his idea of laissez-faire, the government should leave people and businesses alone and let the market operate freely. I mean, one of the things, again, because I'm not taking sides in this, people also point out that one man's red tape is another man's protection. So there's red tape in the city of St. Joseph. Adam can't dig a landfill in his backyard and allow people to pay him money to dump their waste in his backyard. You can't do that. That's red tape to Adam, but to Adam's neighbor Jazz, the idea of people not being able to throw their trash into a giant pit next door sounds like a pretty nice thing for her. And I once lived in a place out in the country where the neighbor did allow people to pay him money to dump all kinds of stuff on his land. It was disgusting. Okay, we should stop there. Which is too bad, because that's right before the Pear Deck, and we get to talk about LeBron James for a while. Well, we'll have to hold off. That'll be the next time we pick up these notes. Okay. Probably. Because I think tomorrow we'll do something different. All right, for now, make sure that you have your notes saved. You can go ahead and get out of the Pear Deck. Again, nothing's going to happen there today. Thank you all for joining, though. All right, once you've got your notes saved, head back to modules and find today's exit slip. It will go live in about a minute.